Today we're going to tie a little bonefish fly called a squimp. It's a little shrimp pattern, great for bonefish. We're just going to start off with some 6/0 uni tan thread and a Tiemco 811S hook in a size 4 or number 6, kind of whatever size you like for your bonefish. And we're going to tie in a pair of lead eyes kind of in the middle to back section of the hook here. And you can use a lot of different kinds. We're going to be using just the new Hareline double pupil lead eyes. You can just use plain lead eyes or painted lead eyes. It's really up to you and the look that you're going for. So we're just going to tie these in kind of at the back section of the hook. This will help the fly sit hook up. And I'm just going to do a few kind of X wraps around those eyes. Make sure they're nice and secure. You can always put a drop of super glue on them to keep them from twisting on you. Then we're going to come back down the bend of the hook here, and we're going to tie in our tail, which is just going to be some tan pseudo hair. You can also use craft fur for this. Both materials work just fine. Pseudo hair is just a little more dense and a little more supple, so I'm always partial to the pseudo hair, but you can use either one. Then we're just going to pull off all the kind of the extra fibers here at the butt ends. And we want to make sure we don't tie in too much for the tail. We just kind of want a little thin piece here, just like so. You want it to be about twice the length of the shank of the hook, so I just kind of roughly measure out once, twice. That's about where I want my tail to be tied in. And I'm just going to tie it in right there at the back. And you can trim out the excess there. Now the next thing we're going to tie in are our legs. For this I'm just going to use some tan Loco legs. Good little shrimpy color. You can use other types of legs. You can use tan legs, brown legs, orange legs, whatever you like the looks of. We're going to tie it along the side of the shank of the hook. We're going to do that on each side. And we're going to trim those legs so they're about the length of the tail. And now we're ready to dub the body. You can do this a few different ways. You can dub it traditionally with a little bit of wax and twist it on your thread. Or you can use a dubbing loop. It goes a little faster. There's a little bit more kind of skill to a dubbing loop. That's what we'll do today. It just goes a lot faster and it gives it a little buggier look. So I'm just going to throw a loop with my thread. Then I'm going to take a little dubbing twister that has the little prongs and put it at the bottom of my loop. And you can use a little wax to kind of pre-wax your thread. That'll help your dubbing kind of stick to it. Then you can use any tan dubbing. I like to use a synthetic tan dubbing here, like an Antron based or a buggy nymph dubbing or a Scud dubbing, just something that has some synthetic and a little bit of flash to it. So we're just going to kind of spread it out in our dubbing loop here. I usually like to start a little sparser at the top and get a little thicker as I go down in my dubbing loop. Then we're going to twist it up into a nice tight rope. And I use a pair of hackle pliers basically to grasp my dubbing loop rope here to get it started. And on this fly I'm going to start at the front and I'm going to wrap my way back down this fly here. I'm going to wrap around the eyes a couple of times. Make sure you have nice, good coverage, and you can capture that end of your dubbing loop and trim out the rest of that rope. Then you can use a dubbing brush or some scissors and kind of clean up some of the shag. I like a little bit of the shag, just kind of makes it look buggy and shrimpy, but you can get rid of that if you don't like the looks of it. It's kind of up to you. Sometimes I'll trim the really long fibers, but it all kind of depends on the look you're going for. Now we can actually take our fly, and you can even leave it in the vise, but we're going to tie inverted. So if you leave it in the vise, you can see it's at an angle here. I always like to quickly just readjust here. What I'm going to do is just take my fly, and place it in the vise upside down so that it's a little more even and easy to tie in upside down here. But it's up to you. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to tie in kind of the collar, or the main front half or body of this fly. And again, we're going to use some matching pseudo hair. You can also use a material called polar fiber. That's another good one. All those materials are very similar. Now this piece, I want it to be about as long as my tail. So I just kind of roughly match them up, get them close in size, and then tie in that top piece. I have some new scissors here that are helping get in close. These are actually hair scissors, but they're micro tip hair scissors. So they have a nice long blade for all these bigger flies, but they have nice fine tips. So some different scissors you probably haven't seen me use in some of my other videos. Now, next material is going to be a long piece of Krystal Flash and Pearl. And we're going to basically tie it in the middle, kind of on the top side of our hook here, but slightly to the side, so kind of on the top, but I'm going to kind of split it to each side just barely. And I'm going to take the other piece and fold it back and tie it on the other side. And I always like to trim my Krystal Flash just a little longer than the collar that I just tied in. Now the last thing to tie in are going to be the legs. We're going to tie these legs in a little different than we did on the tail. We're going to cut the leg in half. So I cut off a whole leg, fold it in half, trim it. That gives me two pieces. These pieces I'm going to tie right in the middle of the leg and right up at the eye. I'm going to wrap all the way up to the eye. What that's going to do is it's going to help split that leg to the side. I'm going to do that on each side of the fly here. You can see I get kind of a nice little X pattern. That's what I'm looking for. And you can whip finish. You can add a little bit of super glue when you're all done to seal it all off. Now the front legs I like to tie a little bit shorter. I like them to be about 1 to half the length of the body. It kind of depends on your taste. We'll kind of go in the middle. We'll do it about 3/4 of the length of the body. And basically when you strip this fly, these legs kind of bounce back and forth. Now these back legs I like to tie just longer than the body, or about the length of the hook. I don't want them to be too long. My long legs are going to be the ones back here at the tail. And I can pull it out of our vise here, see if I can give you kind of a better look of what this fly will look like. We'll move my vise here a little bit. I always like to kind of take that collar and work it just into the tip of the hook. And that is the kind of the Bonefish Squimp. Imitates a little shrimp pattern. Great little fly. It's one of my favorite colors too. It can be tied in olive, brown, but tan is by far the most effective color, along with those tan legs. But very effective fly for bonefish. Permit will eat it too, redfish will eat it, just about anything that eats a shrimp will eat a squimp. So that is the squimp.